Thanks everyone for joining our SWEEP webinar on extended producer responsibility. We are really excited to have Heidi Sanborn, Chair of the National Stewardship Action Council, who has a long and storied career in solid waste and sustainability. Heidi's work has included work as a regulator for CalRecycle, with emphasizing extended producer responsibility and helping drive and guide the state's zero waste initiatives, including SB 54, which demands all packaging coming into the state be completely recyclable or compostable. So we're very excited to have Heidi with us. And we also have our intrepid Executive Director of SWEEP, Natasha Dyer. And Natasha will talk about the extended producer responsibility and circular economic elements in SWEEP. I am Rob Watson. I'm the founder and president of SWEEP, and I will be your moderator. Questions can be put either in the chat or preferably in the Q&A. And while we're waiting for a few more folks to join, we will launch a poll that will get at some of the elements of extended producer responsibility. So please take a minute or two to fill in the poll. All responses are confidential, so frankly, and we really appreciate your help in understanding where people's impressions and understanding is of extended producer responsibility. And we'll have a quick recap of poll results at the end of the session. In terms of housekeeping, as I mentioned, you can put questions in the Q&A. Please introduce yourselves in the chat and feel free to make comments or put ideas in there. Feel free to introduce yourselves. In part, SWEEP is intended to be a network of sustainable materials management professionals. So we want people to meet and greet each other on these webinars. So we'll give the poll another minute and then we will close it, and we will kick it off with Heidi Sanborn. Okay, so I'm going to give up my screen, and Heidi, if you want to get started. Very excited to hear about all your fantastic work and all the great stuff going on in California and other places on EPR. So I'm going to close the poll. Thank you very much for participating, and we'll give the results at the end of the session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rob and Natasha, for having me. And Natasha, I saw your face when he said intrepid, but I consider it says adventurous, humorous, fearless, and I would say that there's a great descriptor of you. So thanks you again for inviting me and having me here. And thanks to all of you for being here. So again, I'm Heidi Sanborn. I founded the California Product Stewardship Council back in 2006-07. and was highly successful at that, passing EPR legislation, then went on to start the National Stewardship Action Council and our sister C3, the Stewardship Action Foundation. And today I've been asked to talk to you about truth in labeling, bottle bills, EPR, and more, and basically how we're going to achieve an equitable circular economy in the United States. And our vision at the National Stewardship Action Council is to attain an equitable circular economy. And we're far from that right now. We've got a lot of work to do. So I'll just start by, again, introducing the two organizations briefly. Most people don't know that there's like 19 kinds of 501 nonprofits under IRS rule in the United States, and they're all different. The one that's called the halo effect is the 501c3 because it's got the most transparency, accountability, enforcement with it, and limited amounts of lobbying can be done in those organizations. They're mostly for education and outreach. But our 501c4, the National Stewardship Action Council, does lobbying and a lot of advocacy. So we educate around the same things that we're advocating for. But that way it's easier for people to give to one or the other. And the mission is, again, to collaborate with our public and private sector and nonprofit stakeholders to achieve the equitable circular economy we hope to achieve. And we've got a very powerful board. We are always looking for new members. So I just wanted to share, these are the amazing people that allow us to do this work. And we're very proud of the diversity of the group, always looking for more diversity and regional diversity too. But everybody, we've got Maya from Texas, Tim's in California. We've got David Stitzel in Washington, and just a broad background of public and private sector and nonprofit and consulting. And then at our Stewardship Action Foundation, the same. In fact, we're adding new board members to both boards. Very excited about that. But again, we've got New Mexico, we've got e-waste company, recyclers, folks in government, and it's all advocating for the circular and equitable economy. But I want to talk very briefly about something that's most important to me. I got into the waste industry, actually, I got excited about it as a kid because I was very upset about litter. And I used to go pick up litter in the park, literally when I was 5 and 6. I never liked it. And I always thought it was an abuse of nature. And my mind always went to turning off the spigot. How do we stop litter? How do we stop waste? And yet, most of what we spend our time doing is mopping it up. And so, you know, when the bathtub's overflowing, the smart people run to turn off the spigot first, then grab the mop. But what's happened is the spigot turned on so slowly over the last 100 years that we've all just kind of been accommodating, and we find ourselves doing a lot of very expensive mopping, which, by the way, isn't that effective anyway. So I always try to get to turn off that spigot, and that's why I like extended producer responsibility, because we're making the producer where this all starts. They make the design and marketing decisions, the material choices, the labeling choices. They're the ones that start this whole thing in motion, and we need their participation in the solution. And I always like to remind people that, you know, when people say, well, you can't get to zero waste, you can't make things circular. Well, we broke a circular system. Nature is an orb, and everything is self-contained. So you've got one system's waste is the feedstock for the next. And we interrupted it by introducing man-made chemicals and pollution, and disturbing a lot of the Earth's crust, and we can talk about that too. But things were where they were supposed to be, and we're moving them all around and doing a lot of damage. So like putting carbon in the atmosphere that took millions of years to put into the soil. That is why we can achieve a circular economy, but we have to work for it. And I use Ellen MacArthur Foundation's definition of a circular economy, because I hear people say, well, let's get a circular economy around plastics. Well, I'll back up to that in a minute, but let's talk about the definition, because I believe it's this, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's definition, where you start by designing out waste and pollution first. Turn off the spigot. Then keep products and materials in motion. So recycling and composting. And then we go back and fix the natural systems we've done so much damage to. Biodiversity loss, climate change. We could go on and on about the damage. We've done tons of it. And it's accelerating, which is terrifying to me. But we've got to decouple economic activity from the use of finite resources. That is not working. So all those three things, if applied to plastics, can you design out waste and pollution? Can you keep those materials in a circle without having them leak into the environment? And what are you doing in that policy to regenerate the natural systems plastics harmed? The only bill I know of in the world that's done that is SB 54, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But that's a high bar, and most conversations are just around recycling, and I would just urge you to use the recycling is recycling. Circular economy is way bigger. And the reason it's important we do this, the climate science is getting really scary and more scary every month. We just had the hottest temperatures ever on Earth last month since they can track. And we're in big trouble. But if we look at where these climate emissions are coming from, the greenhouse gases, if you retake the numbers that the EPA put out from the actual source, like a transportation or energy plant, and you say, well, what's being transported? Why is the power plant on? What is it making? It's products and packaging that are 44% of the emissions. So what we do is incredibly impactful to the climate. And I would say all of you are climate champions, and be proud of that, because what the work we're doing has a huge impact on the climate. Now, how do we get a circular and equitable economy? There's different policy tools that can be used. These are the four primary ones that I use and I'm aware of. Sales bans, so just to ban things. Remember, design waste and pollution out of the system. Well, it might be that you have to just ban it if there's other alternatives and so forth. Truth in labeling is a big one. And the reason is that when labels lie to the public about what the product is, about it being recyclable or compostable when it's really not, or it's, I've actually seen no microplastics on a styrofoam container. That sends a signal to the person purchasing it. This is green. This is a good thing. So they buy it. And then it tells them, well, it's recyclable. They throw it in the recycling bin, and that's contamination. So if we don't get truth on the labels, the entire system is broken from the time the consumer purchases it. And they're purchasing and driving the wrong market because they were told a lie. So that's important. The other tool we use is product stewardship, and I'll explain the difference between product stewardship and EPR. Product stewardship is a softer version. It's the voluntary, or it's a visible fee, where it's really not the producer's money, it's the consumer's money. And I will explain the difference of why that is so dramatically different, because people say, well, the producers will just pass on the cost to consumers. They might, or they will, but there's a very big difference between taking public money, handing it to a manufacturing group and letting them do what they want with it without all the controls of government on the money, and having them actually internalize those costs, end up having it on their expense reports to shareholders that then say, you guys need to get that cost down. That cost of recycling is too high. Well, then they think redesign. How do I make this more durable? How do I make it out of a material that's more recyclable? That's what drives the design change, using our financial systems levers. Without it, in product stewardship, they don't have the design change financial driver, which to me is fundamental to getting this all right and turning off the tap. So, which policy tool you choose, these are the questions I ask myself. How toxic is it? Because if it's really toxic, there's no such thing as keeping it in motion. We just want to sequester it like mercury. We don't want it out there anymore. So if it's toxic, ban it if we can, and PFAS. Are there safer alternatives on the market, or are they forthcoming? What other states or countries have done with this material? Often we're way behind Europe usually, so we can look to them and see what they've done. And is the international community limiting the shipping or disposal like they are right now of plastics or mercury? And then how is the state determining the product to be hazardous? And is that causing problems? Because we have had that problem in California. It may be specific to us here where I'm based. So we'll start with EPR. It's just one of the policy tools in the toolbox, but it's a big one. And whoop, there we go. So in California, we've been able to pass a lot of bills that drive a circular and equitable economy. And it goes way back to when I first formed the California Product Stewardship Council in 2008. First year, we got 3 bills, which is kind of shocking. But ag pesticide containers, the 5 gallons, were already in a voluntary program that was running out of money by the end of every year, and farmers were lining up and had nowhere to bring their containers because we don't want pesticide plastic containers to be ending up as baby bottles. So that was made mandatory by the governor, a mandatory EPR program. Recall products, we had lunch boxes with lead-based paint on them sold in California. We're like, why is that coming back to a public hazardous waste facility? That wasn't even supposed to be sold. Make the manufacturers take it back. So we did that. And then mercury-containing thermostats. People don't understand that is the largest pool of mercury in the public's hands. 1 ampule, and sometimes there's 4 per thermostat, can pollute a lake. So we got EPR for that. Then stewardship, different. Remember, it's a visible fee. We got that on paint, carpet in 2010, and then we got mattresses in 2013. But after that, I determined we don't like that model, and I'll explain why more in depth. But we did switch and go to, but those were the early adopters, and they weren't fighting us all the way. So that was part of the reason we let them do it. And then we did paint and sharps as a full EPR program in 2018. Everybody said we couldn't take on big pharma and win, but we did. I'll explain how we did it. Same with loose batteries in 2022, and packaging, which is actually bigger. It's EPR, what I call version 3.0 plus, because we got this whole circular economy in there. And then we actually banned the sale of mercury containing lighting in California last year. So I've worked on other bills in other states, but the ones I've done soup to nuts and implementation is all here in California. And that gives you the background of our experience. So starting with the thermostats, again, that's internalized cost of doing business. And we even got in a cleanup bill in 2022 that every thermostat returned to a retailer that collects them back for free, that all paid for by the producers, they will give you $30 per thermostat. And that's a big incentive. And that will go through 2030 to get those, because we haven't sold them since 1992. That's a great program. Then we have the paint stewardship law. So again, this is visible charge on the receipt, but at the back end, everything is free. And I have to say, we went from 64 collection locations that were just at hazardous waste facilities. I think we're up to 900 in California. And it's super convenient. People love this program. I get more compliments about this than anything. Worked very hard on it. And we were the first state in California to pass it as a permanent program. And now look at all the states. I think there's 10 or 12 that have them. And it literally saves our local governments millions of dollars. And paint management costs. That was half of our hazardous waste costs at the time. Then we did the carpet stewardship the same year as paint, but unfortunately that industry has not been as proactive. They've been fighting every other state that's introduced carpet stewardship legislation. And it's still, I'm trying to clean it up, but the legislature wasn't that educated in 2010. The industry was fighting, so they made it very difficult. And I could get into, I will just say this, there's good EPR and there's not great EPR. You know, the devil does live in the details. And if you don't know the details, get somebody like me who does before you try to pass a bill or advocate, because there's so many potholes out there that you could fall in. It's taken me decades, literally, to figure it all out. Mattresses is another visible fee program, but this came in 2013, and they were much more like paint, ready to do it, wanted to do it. They're doing a lot better. They're finally getting to green design, but they really weren't mandated to do green design in the original bill in 2013. But that's where we're going with all the EPR bills now. But it's working relatively well, and now they're working on some illegal dumping programs. Medications and sharps. This is the one everybody told me, oh, you're a fool's errand. You'll never get it. You know, they sued us to the U.S. Sued Alameda County, who first passed the ordinance. I worked with them on that. They got sued all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won. It is not a violation of the Commerce Clause to tell a manufacturer that they have to pay for a take back of a product that has a public health and safety impact. That's what the High Court found. If I used to think packaging did not fall in that, but now that we know about the microplastics in our arteries and in our brains and affecting possibly reproduction and inflammation response, I think we could absolutely make the case, especially for plastics. So that's an interesting thing. It really did lay the rules of the road down, the legal rules of the road for EPR being passed all the way down to the local level. And it's been very effective at driving the bar up on the bills we can pass at the state level by getting power to the local governments to do it too. This bill was very powerful in that we required the producers of drugs to actually, if any pharmacy, hospital, or sheriff station, all the legally allowed operators of a take back bin, asked for a bin, they had to be given one within 90 days. So the producers can't pick and choose who's going to have them. If they can legally have them and ask for it, they have to give it to them. And the sharps and the needles are provided a mail back program, a container at point of sale, and often they get sent a box, and they just put that container in the box, and it's prepaid shipping. And that's how it's working all over California right now. It's fantastic. And local governments, I told them, if local governments still got needles, they don't take medicines, but if they still got needles at the hazardous waste facilities, producers were going to have to pay for it because somehow their mail back wasn't working. And I'm really glad I held out for that provision, because it's working in that counties now are getting a lot of money to compensate them for the needles that are still coming to their facilities. And the producers also have to do public education and outreach, which is standard with EPR programs. So again, this is the history of the ordinance in Alameda County, the first ordinance in the US on pharmaceuticals, or on anything really. And it was passed in 2012. Pharma challenged it in 2014, and the Supreme Court denied the appeal in 2015. So I'm super proud of that. That was a long, hard fight, and I was working with Alameda County the whole way. And in order to get the state bill passed, we started, as I said, in 2012 with Alameda County passing an ordinance on drug take back. Then we got San Francisco, then San Mateo, then Santa Clara, and these were all 5-0 votes. We had unanimous votes until the second to last, or I guess Santa Barbara County, that we lost one vote. But all the rest were passed unanimously. So what you can, that tells you is you can get better local law than you can at the state level where all the lobbying goes, and then at the federal level where there's the most money in lobbying. But that's what drove the industry to the table to want a statewide solution, is that we were making these all slightly different. Just trying to twist the knife a little bit, get them to the table, and it worked. And we also find that in a lot of these situations, there's layer upon layer upon layer of problems. And if it's a big problem, like with pharmaceuticals, sometimes we start the legislation with solving one of the earlier problems. So for example, pharmacies were saying, well, we're afraid to host a bin because what about the liability? What if somebody throws in a pill and it spills out, we don't see it, some little kid picks it up and gets a drug overdose. So we passed a law that protected them from the liability. And that kind of eased us in and got us a great relationship with the pharmacists. And then we passed a bill, and we started sending Senator Hannah Jackson, who was working on the legislation, which had failed several times. We started sending letters directly to county supervisors and asking them to pass the ordinances, and it totally worked. She was an amazing author. And I was running around doing all these presentations to educate local governments and everybody else. But this county where I was presenting at the time on the whole concept, Contra Costa County, they literally just got a check for $32,000 for 6 months just to cover the cost of their sharps collection at their hazardous waste facility. $64,000 a year just for one product that's now a cost off their back that they can use for organics or anything else. But that tells you how expensive it is for managing these things at the back end when the producers have no responsibility and don't care and externalize all these costs onto the environment and local governments. It's not working. But this is what a sharps collection bin looks like in Contra Costa. And people love them. But now you can just order online and get everything sent to your house. You don't even have to go anywhere. So if you're disabled, low income, don't have a car, you can get the same service. And there's 2 producer-run programs, Med Project and the Take Back Solutions Foundation, that run the program in California. Just showing you that this is what it really looks like when a program gets up and running. And then the hazardous waste facilities, this is the form they fill out, very easy. Now, how do we get these really hard things done? I want to share that I joined the board of the California Foundation for the Environment and the Economy specifically to take legislators on study trips to see how EPR works in Canada and in other states actually too. And this is some pictures that we took at the trip where we couldn't get into Canada because we weren't allowed because it was during COVID, but we went to Oregon and Washington and we saw organics facilities and the Oregon recycling bottle program where they're actually refilling beer bottles. And it resulted in legislation getting passed in California so we can go back to refillable bottles in the bottle bill program. It's changed the law on organics. We've gotten a whole bunch done. We've done this 5 years in a row, and I cannot tell you how important these trips are for developing relationships between, we bring stakeholders and we bring legislators, and everybody bonds, they learn to trust each other, and it's so much easier for negotiating tough stuff, especially when you see it together. We also did Vancouver and Toronto 1 year. We saw tire recycling, battery recycling, and again, we saw battery recycling right before we passed the bill the next year. And I don't think it's unrelated because we're all learning together and seeing how others do it. But just to tell you how hard it was to get batteries, because the industry was fighting, this is the first bill I ran was in 2010. We didn't get it passed till 2022. It took 12 years. It shouldn't take that long now, but some industries, it takes longer. The fires really became an issue that everybody was willing to take action, even against the industry's opposition. And then I chaired the State Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling. We released a report to the legislature with 34 policy recommendations that had 17-0 votes. We had local governments, NGOs, waste management, the haulers. We were all on there, unions even, and all agreeing. And that gave confidence to the legislators to make big moves on EPR. That was also very exciting. But we also concluded that nothing was going to work right if everybody's getting lied to on the label, which then means the customer's buying the wrong thing and setting the whole system up to fail. So we got this whole concept of truth in labeling from the commission. And one of our commissioners actually did research and came up with this slide that this is an EnviroCooler she purchased in Walmart in 2021 that says it's basically apple pie and everything good in America, made in America, recyclable, no microplastics, biodegradable, and it's all lies. And we just can't have this anymore. So we passed the law, and then of course the red cup, everybody recycles it and it's a contaminant. Nobody wants a 6, but this is a big deal because then people buy the wrong thing, send the wrong market signals, and the companies keep putting the wrong stuff on the market and labeling like this. So I was actually quoted in the New York Times saying nobody should be able to lie to the public. And I mean that on the labels. This got a lot of press. And then I co-sponsored the bill to fix this chasing arrow problem. SB 343 with Senator Ben Allen, who was on the study trips. Again, it's all coming together. And we got literally 43-0 vote in the Senate. And I think we had a unanimous vote on the Senate side as well. I'm sorry, in the Assembly. So that means that by 2025, July of 2025, nothing can have a chasing arrow in California and be sold that does not hit 60% recycling rate, collection by the local governments, and then out the back end in a bale that's getting actually to a market. That's going to change the game. The other thing we did was define compostable, but that was another bill. So we've got both labeling laws passed. Also, we did flushable wipes. They're not flushable. That's a huge problem. People flush them because they're told to flush them, and then it clogs their pipes, causes sewer damage, huge cost to people, very stressful. So we passed that in California. Now that's introduced nationally as well. We also passed in 2022 a cannabis vaping device law that says you cannot call them disposable, and you must tell the public that they are hazardous waste. But I want to go back after them and make sure that they're doing product take back. So truth in labeling has become a really big thing for us, and I hope for you too. But I want you to also know that in the definition of what's recyclable, we said it can't contain toxic chemicals, including PFAS. So again, we've got to turn the spigot off on the toxics because we don't want them, and we don't want them, and they can't be in a circular economy. So the big bill, SB 54, EPR for packaging, all these people work together. We had 100 meetings in 8 months. We have everybody from Oceana, Ocean Conservancy, myself, Monterey Bay Aquarium on the environmental side, and the Nature Conservancy. And then it was Biodegradable Packaging Institute, American Chemistry Council, Chamber of Commerce, the Recycling Partnership, League of Cities, Association of Counties, Waste Management, Republic. We were all there lobbying and thinking through together how to write this bill. That's how it happened. It was hard work. But this bill got signed into law the last minute, literally like right before 5 p.m. on June 30th of 2022. It was a big, big deal. And I won't even get into how hard this was. But it is the first circular economy bill in the world that I know of. And it is EPR, but it's version 3 plus in my book, because it's doing everything. It's not just about recycling. This is turning off the spigot. Everything has to be recyclable or compostable that's sold in California by 2032 in packaging. Everything. And in the interim, we have recycling rates with hard dates. So 30% by 2028, up to 65% by 2032. We have true source reduction. So for plastics, it has to be 25% source reduction by weight and by the number of units by 2032. Nobody's tried that before that we know of, and that's a real challenge to industry. We also say that we want reuse and refill to be part of that source reduction. So 2% minimum has to be reuse and refill, and then 4% by 2030. We also have environmental justice. So many years people in disadvantaged, under-resourced communities have had the brunt of all the pollution from the facilities and the manufacturing and so forth. There's going to be a $5 billion mitigation fund, completely paid for by the producers of the packaging and the resin manufacturers for plastics. We get $500 million a year in California to be distributed to local governments and these under-resourced communities and our state agencies like the Natural Resources Agency to clean up and remediate natural systems. That's a circular economy bill. Now, in EPR, you can also include, a ban. Even though they could be separate policy tools, you could put them in the same bill. So we did that. We didn't call it a ban, but it's a de facto ban because they have to, polystyrene has to hit 25% recycling rate by 2025, or else they can't sell in California. and there's no way they're going to hit that. But if we had used the word ban, Cal Chamber would have killed the bill. So we didn't use the word ban. Now, enforcement is very important in a good bill. You've got to have a sheriff, and that's the state agencies. In this case, it's Cal Recycle, and they have a 50-day, up to 50-day, $50,000 a day fine for not hitting goals of the bill. But the big tool, the one that I fought to add to the bill, which is the first that I know of in the world, is the state could revoke the producer-run organization's ability to run the program if they fail to continue to hit targets. So that's a big incentive for them because they do not want to lose control of the program. So that's a big deal. But we also, remember I've talked about turning the spigot off, especially on toxics. PFAS in particular, I say is the DDT of our generation, except it's worse. And it's already doing reproductive damage. I don't think people understand just how dangerous this stuff is, and it's in all of us. So in SB 343 and AB 1201, the two bills that defined recycling and compostable, we said you can't label it as recyclable or compostable if you've added PFAS. Just can't, or other toxic chemicals. But we did have some success at passing some bills also to get them out of juvenile products like toys and textiles and cosmetics. But, you know, we've got way too much out there. And getting back to labeling, has anybody ever seen a label that said this contains toxic PFAS and has a skull and crossbones? No. The federal government is now blaming everybody at the back end, like landfills, for their leachate to have PFAS. But what has the government done? They allowed them to sell this without even telling us it was in there. We had no way to even protect ourselves. Landfills are passive receivers. Waterways and water treatment plants are passive receivers. They can't be made to pay this. The producers of this PFAS should be made to pay for this. And that is my pitch. So I got in the U.S. Plastics Pact, I fought very hard that they must ban and call for the elimination of PFAS in packaging, and they did. Now, sales bans can be standalone. So we did a standalone ban here in California last year and passed a bill to ban the sale of mercury-containing lighting. Who in their right mind is going to give one of the most neurotoxic metals to people in little thin pieces of glass? We did. Everybody in America was told they should buy these things and it was more energy efficient, but people don't understand that Hg means mercury, how toxic it is, that these things break, they volatilize, you breathe it, you get it in your lungs and into your brain, and it's really hard to get out. So now that we've got LEDs on the market, we just phased out mercury-containing lighting by next January for the compacts, and then the following January for the longer tubes, 4 to 8 feet. And we're very proud of that. I helped get 5 other states to pass it this year too. Again, this was a long journey though. We started in 2007-9 talking about this. We even talked about EPR for lamps, but the industry fought so hard. It was such a bad bill. I would rather not have had the bill. It was so bad. It was going to get in the way of future progress. So we eventually just got a hard ban. We had lots of support. So even for a ban, you know, we got it in 5 states, plus California and Vermont before that. And hopefully, if you know of anybody who's interested, we really need to get this mercury out of the waste stream. It affects our workers too. So yeah, Oregon, Rhode Island, Maine, Colorado, and Hawaii. Again, turning that spigot off, starting the circular economy journey. And now I wanted to bring this to your attention that Vermont, super proud of Vermont, they just passed the first EPR for all household hazardous waste in the nation. And I hope to duplicate that here in California soon and get it in some ordinances again to push that bar up on the bills. But it's all household hazardous waste that's not under an existing EPR program like paint is for them. And it's going to make all the producers join an organization and run the program. So bravo to little Vermont. Now, getting these bills done, you know, I could get into great detail and I literally teach classes on this, But in short, you've got to collect data. You've got to find political champions. You've got to make your case and get those champions to understand the case. Find people and organizations that are not your normal aligned allies. Find your unlikely bedfellows. Because if it looks like there's all these different people that get together and support something that usually don't work together, that sends a signal to legislators there's a there, and they will fight for the bill. And it's passable. So then you got to educate your legislators like we did on the study trips. We created a whole package and called it Circular Economy Bill Package in California. That really helped. And the legislators worked together from those trips to pass bill packages. And then it started making sense to people. And you can also go local. If you can't get it at state level, start at the local level like we did with pharmaceuticals. Just to give you a sense where California is for next year, we've already got 5 bills that are EPR or somewhat like EPR. We're carrying the one on carpet, but we want it to be all flooring and we want it to be an EPR model. Don't know if we're going to get there. We're going to try really hard because this visible fee thing is not working. AB2 is a bill for solar panels, and it started as an EPR bill and went rogue. And the last version I saw is going to put solar panels from the customers into an existing state-run e-waste program. It's not working well. I'm not a fan of it. And it's going to make the developers of utility scale solar do it instead of the producers of solar. That is not EPR. So I'm pushing on that bill. But EV batteries and cars, we're working on EPR, gas cylinders, and textiles. That's just California. So there's a lot going on out there. But nationally, I started talking about what we're doing on the National Bottle Bill, the Wipes and Pipes Acts on the flushable wipes, and truth in labeling laws. I've worked in other states, the fluorescent lamp bans, and then I did facilitate some national dialogues on solar panels, but those are over. Hopefully they'll re-up, but I don't think until the fight's over in California they're going to. So quickly, national bottle bills. Bottle bills, people say, do you want a bottle bill or do you want EPR? Well, that doesn't make sense, because almost all bottle bills are producer-run programs. The only one that I know of in the world that is not run by the producers is in California. It's a state-run program, has hundreds of state employees. It's always a mess. The customers can't get their deposits back. I could go on, but I'd love to get that flipped to a producer-run model. But most bottle bills are EPR. They just have a deposit also. Deposits are simply a vehicle to get collections up. They're a financial incentive to get them back. But it's not a funding mechanism for the program, or it shouldn't be. We believe that there needs to be a national bottle bill introduced. It just got, discussed again in the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, but it's much bigger than that and includes things like not allowing any more plastics facilities, which is an absolute do not pass go for the House. So unless we get bipartisan, introduction, I don't see a bill passing in Congress. And only 10 states have bottle bills, but some of them are like 50 years old. And we've done studies that litter, which is out of control everywhere, is, you will have 50% less litter if you pass a bottle bill. And that's kind of shocking. But it's a huge immediate improvement. So that Keep America Beautiful study, feel free to use it if you're trying to make the case for it in your state. But Susan Collins with the Container Recycling System or Institute says 10.3 million additional tons of materials will be recycled every year if we can pass a national bottle bill for the other 40 states. So just quickly, these are the 10 states in orange that have bottle bills, and you can see California is one of the worst at 44%. Maine's at 72, New York's at 51. And these are not good. Actually, if you look at Europe, they're over 90%. Some of them are even older than ours, but some of them are younger too. But you can see the states that don't have bottle bills, 4% Louisiana, 13% New Mexico, So they make a huge difference getting back bottles and cans for recycling. And I mean, like West Virginia's at 2% recycling rate without a bottle bill. It's just stunning. They're not recycling practically at all. So it is time for a national bottle bill. And we've started this effort. We've already had a lobby day. We've been really working on education. We've had national webinars. It's coming. It's just a matter of when we're going to get enough traction and the political situation calms down. But that's up to the American people on how we vote. So we've got also the Wipes and Pipes Act introduced, and we've got bipartisan support, which we're thrilled with. So we've got Representative McLean from Michigan, and, so we've got Republicans, Democrats, independents, all supporting getting rid of the words flushable on these wipes. And hopefully you can help us pass this. If you'd like to help, let us know. I've got a lot of information, but every state should be pushing on their legislators to pass this bill. This should be a no-brainer. So I just want to thank all the people that fund us. And there's a lot more. These are the top funders. But if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. It's only $150 a year for an individual, $500 for an organization. It goes up. But this work is hard and it's very hard to fund. But I love doing it. And I'm not good at much, but I am good at this. So if you want to be part of the group and help drive a circular, equitable economy, we'd love to have you. And my goal is that 20 years from now, nothing is sold that doesn't have an end of market plan in place. So you can follow us on social media for free, and I'm happy to take questions, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
That was totally amazing. Like drinking from a fire hose. You're doing the work of like 6 people. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your vision, your success, and just both a very inspiring and substantive presentation. Please put your questions in the Q&A or chat while we are waiting for Natasha to get set up very quickly. Just looking at our poll, we had pretty even answers to the response about circular economy principles, indicating that we're still young, and also nascent interest in sweep and circular economy, also reflecting the newness of the initiative, but happy to see that EPR is in most in the majority of the folks state, probably reflecting the heavy California presence. So Natasha, you got your show ready to go, and so
yeah,
why don't we we're going to hold off questions and then we'll take them after Natasha gets her presentation done.
And I had a burning question too. I wanted to ask Heidi. Thank you so much, Heidi. Just really quickly, I was wondering, as you guys get SB 54 going into effect and you're mandating all the packaging to be truly recyclable and compostable, and then as different businesses have to clamor to comply, do you have any estimates how that will have a domino effect across the country and even the globe even? Because California being like the 8th biggest economy, like instead of starting to redesign just for the California market, or some of these packagers or people that have packaging, can you tell that they're going to have to just start finally doing the right thing and start designing things in such a way that it can be recyclable? Or does it not help if different parts of the country and the world don't even have recyclable programs?
Great question, Natasha. And I just noticed that Patty Toes, one of my newest board members, is on. So from Aptum Consulting, hi, Patty. Thanks again for your support. It's already making a difference for everybody, and I'll tell you why. So when California moves, we just surpassed Germany as the 4th largest economy in the world.
Wow. Oh, 4th. Okay. Well, yeah, big.
So we've gone from 5th to 4th.
Yeah. Okay.
When we move, it changes how producers produce, because nobody wants to let go of a 40 million person market. So when Vermont does it, that's 1%, a million people, 40 million people, they're not going to ignore it. And they often can't do one line for California and then another line for different. So often what's already happened, and our friend Wes Carter from Atlantic Packaging. He's the CEO of the largest family-owned packaging company in the country. He's now on the SB 54 working group, and he's told us that the day after 54 got signed, clients he had been pushing on to go to fiber-based solution from plastics called him and said, we got it, go for it, change the packaging platform.
Oh,
We
that's
don't
great.
want to have any trouble with California, just do it. And so he's literally for Williams-Sonoma, they've already changed the entire platform in 9 months to go all fiber. There's no plastic at all now in the Williams-Sonoma shipping model. And they're doing more upstream and working with their suppliers to making sure they're not even getting stuff that's plastic.
Might as well just go for it, right? Get ready for the wave. If it's changing and the biggest economies are mandating that you do that, you might as well just make the design changes now. So that's great. Thank you, California. Always California.
Not always, but this time.
Natasha, why don't you
Yeah.
spend a few minutes just talking about EPR and how SWEEP promotes it, and then we'll try and get
Absolutely.
the other two answers. If not, I will email those